Numinous Podcast with Carmen Spaniola.
Hi there, and welcome to the Numinous Podcast, where we have interesting conversations with everyday folks about the mystery of life. I'm your host, Carmen Spaniola, joining you from the lands of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees, and the Esquimalt First Nations, recently known as Victoria, BC, Canada. If you've read my book, The Spirited Kitchen, or you've just been around my work for a while, you might know that I come from a long line of horse people, a lineage that wends its way from southern Alberta and rodeo culture to the Scottish Highlands in the late 1800s, where my way back people bred, trained, and worked Highland ponies for labor in the coal mines and to build railroads. So it's been a long and complicated relationship between my family and horses, and I am the first generation, in as far back as we can see, to not have horses in my life on an everyday basis. And that is a profound source of grief for me. What has also been a source of grief has been that many of the problems that I've supported my child through, and if you don't know, I have a 19-year-old with autism and ADHD and mental health challenges, and now emergent physical disabilities that present, at least at this point, like fibromyalgia. The grief around that is that though I do believe in the many treatment and support options we've tried and worked with over time, I think there's been some efficacy. The thing that seems to work best for my child is time outside the city with horses. It's really the only time my child can interact with another being for an extended period of time without becoming flooded or exhausted and then requiring basically 3 days of sleep and aftercare afterwards. But the style of equine therapy, like the skillfulness of the practitioner and the level of literacy they need to have about the nervous system and about interpersonal neurobiology and about secure attachment, is very high. They have to have a very high level of knowledge and self-awareness for this type of treatment to be worthwhile for my child. My autistic child simply cannot be around someone dominating an animal in any way. It's just way too dysregulating for my child. And as I get older and as I get better at uncoupling from hierarchy and dominance and coercion myself, it gets harder for me to tolerate being around and anywhere around that kind of dominance too. So it's just not going to be therapeutic for me or my kid to be around horses if they're in an environment governed by dominance and coercion. And this is where my next guest comes in. I have known Alexa Linton for probably going on about like 9 years now. And when I began to experience the limits of what conventional psychotherapy could offer my then younger child, in terms of learning like self and co-regulation skills, I turned to Alexa and her two horses, Diva and Raven, for help. Alexa is an osteopathic practitioner for humans, maybe also for animals too. I'm not sure if that's a thing that happens. Anyway, Alexa is an osteopath and has 15 years of manual therapy and also energy work under her belt. So osteopathy, for folks who don't know, is a modality that uses manual manipulation. So like stretching, gentle pressure, some resistance, that takes a really holistic approach to understand what's happening in the body, not only with like muscles and the skeleton, but also the nerves and the fascia and the ligaments and everything else. So it's gentle work with biomechanics, you might say. Alexa is also the co-instructor of a comprehensive equine cranial therapy certification. So cranial sacral therapy, if you don't know about that, that is also hands-on, but it's quite subtle pressure, and the focus is more on the fascia, like the connective tissues of the body. And the work generally happens at the head and the neck and along the spine. And yeah, it turns out you can do that with the horses. And she's also done additional work to support her human clients with traumatic brain injury. Alexa really is someone that I have witnessed continually learning and adapting her practice to fit with new understandings about interspecies relationships and trauma and healing and supremacy culture. And I just trusted her to be sensitive to what my child would need in order to feel safe around these big horses. So Raven and Diva are like, they're large cold-blood breeds. I think Raven might be part Canadian horse and Diva is a Morgan Percheron cross. And they have very different personalities. And so usually when we've done sessions, my kiddo works with Diva, who's a very, let's say, energy conserving horse. Like very chill to the point of not wanting to move a lot sometimes, that kind of vibe. And I work with Raven, who has a more kind of like spirited, kind of strong personality, like in the sense that she has a really clear sense of herself and her preferences. And I guess we just kind of get along in that way. So for a long time, I've wanted to have Alexa on the show to talk about the evolving culture of horsemanship. And when she invited me to be a guest lecturer in her signature program, the Whole Horse Apprenticeship, it was very clear that this conversation was long overdue. And I'm so glad that she gave me the nudge. So without further ado, welcome Alexa. So Alexa, what identities do you lead with?
So this is the question that kept me up last night. And I feel the reason why is because I am in a wee bit of an identity crisis at the moment. So I am a white, cis, straight woman, and that's how I appear in the world. I went through a major illness last year, as you know, and it's changed everything for me. So I used to show up in the identity as horseback rider, for example, teacher, doer, going concern, right?
Mm-hmm.
All those things. And it's really shifted. I still lead with the identity always of horse lover. It's one of those things that has stayed present with me really for my whole life and continuing into now. The teacher identity, I will say right at this minute, equine cranial level 2 is happening, and I am not there because I can't teach right now with my current energy levels and health. So that's been very sobering because that was something that was really a part of who I was, who I am in my world. And yeah, so lately I think a part of what I've been showing up as, which is really weird to say, is human that has been recovering from a major illness and is in that space, and what that means as far as changes to my lifestyle and saying no and rearranging and just being with what is possible for my body, not my heart, not even necessarily my spirit, but my body in every moment. Yeah, and that's where I am at this time. And there's moments of joy in that. There's obviously a lot of moments of grief and a lot of emotions with it. Yeah.
I can imagine. It sounds like even the good things, when you're saying I have to see what is possible now, given the capacity of my body, I imagine even good things that might be happening, you probably have to modify, adapt, and kind of create new relationship around, because when you're in recovery, even a good thing can overwhelm your body. You really can't have too much of a good thing. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm not going to push you too hard then on some, I'm not going to try to keep you up after this, late at night, because you obviously will need your rest. So let's start then with how, like, your new perspective then on you as horse lover, you as person who has been in relationship with horses, and that is probably even now changing. So let's go to the beginning. What was it like for you when you first became a horse companion? Like, tell us about your first horse and that journey and how you came to be steward to your two horses, Raven and Diva.
Yeah. So Diva is and was my first horse. So November 1st, I think, of this upcoming, so in a couple of months, is our 20-year anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, we met. She was 4. I had previously to that been involved in horses. And, if any of your listeners are horse people, they may relate. I was sort of the classic hunter jumper barn, very traditional horsemanship upbringing. So that was just really what was available. I grew up in Vancouver. That was what was available in our area. And I had a terrifying riding instructor. And looking back, I think, wow, that was like in balance. Like, I loved horses so much that it sort of made up for like the traumatic part of that. But it was really, like, literally terrifying. Someone screaming at you, get that horse over the jump and do it now and kick them. And like,
Oh my
that was just
gosh.
normal.
Whoa,
Normal.
that sounds really abusive. How old
It
were
was
you?
really abusive. It would have been probably 12 or 13 at the
Oh,
time.
that makes me
Yeah.
teary. Oh.
Yeah. And this is from what I hear, because of course I work with a lot of sort of recovering horse people around this. This is pretty normal for a lot of people growing up in North American horsemanship. And when I relate that story, it's like, oh yeah, I had that happen. It was very sort of, I want to say that, like, that there was almost like a military feel to it. So
Mm.
every time you rode, it was like, these are the steps, and you do them or else, and you clean your saddle at the end of this ride or else. And, it was very structured, in terms of get it done. And I call it now, I've talked a lot about it, get it done horsemanship. It's just this, and it is, it's abusive, it's violent when it comes down to it. And it's still done a lot of places. It's
Mm.
still normalized in a lot of places. It's one of the reasons that I do the work that I do, because it had been so. I mean, we know, and I think there's some question. I know there's some questions on this coming up, but there's this very, very strong parallels between riding and horsemanship, white supremacy, patriarchal culture. It's built in to the structure from a young age that your horse does what you say. If they're not willing to be controlled, then you punish them for it, and you get what you need to get done.
Mm. How did
And
that go with your relationship with Diva then? I
it
mean,
did
like you're.
not go it did not go well. It did not go well because I carried that in. I mean, I still have snippets of that come
Mm.
in, because it's something, it's like in my nervous system, in my cells, and I work with that all the time, that the shame around that. And okay, what do I need to do to actually find a place where I don't feel I need to escalate? I don't have to go into those places, that it can be just what it is. I'm getting so much better. I'm really proud of myself in that. And I think that with me, the horse industry, I would like to think, is getting better.
Mm.
There's more and more and more talk about this. There's more people sharing in important ways about it. And I'm so grateful. So, going back to your question, when Diva came into my life, it was very messy. She was not, understandably, okay with what I was bringing to the table as
Mm.
far as our relationship was concerned, and made that very clear. I regret a lot of the things that I've done in our relationship together. I think that, I've done a lot of reparations and reconciliation, but there's only so much that you can do when, the water's under the bridge.
Mhm.
And I know that it's landed in her nervous system in some ways that I feel sad about, regretful, very regretful about, right? Because I brought her through systems of horsemanship that were about desensitization,
Mm.
which basically meant flooding,
Mhm.
right? It
Mhm.
basically meant put so much on this horse that they shut down and collapse
Mhm.
and they don't react to it anymore.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Oh, that's so sad. Can you, for folks who don't know, I know Diva, but can you share what kind of horse Diva is and
Yeah.
what her spirit is like?
Yeah. So Diva is a Pritchard Morgan cross, from what I know. She has a mysterious start. I don't know her birthday, so I would say it's May 1st, but I'm not sure. I found her, we found each other when she was 4 through, those beautiful synchronicities that happen. And she happened to be at a barn that I was riding at, and her owner just happened to be like, "You should ride Diva today." I couldn't ride the other horse that I was riding, and that was kind of it. I fell pretty hard after that. It was very clear that we needed to be on this journey together, even
Mhm.
though there was a lot of challenge in it. We started in Victoria. I soon realized that the situation for her with small paddocks, tiny stalls, electric fencing, all of that was just not okay for her and her system. We moved then to Duncan, to the Cowichan Valley in 2008, I think. That move was because of her. I needed to find her friends. I needed to find her forage. I needed to find her things to do and spaces to move and run. Um, I don't really think I think most of you would expect she changed overnight. She went
Mm.
from wild-eyed, un, unworkable, unrideable to a different horse.
Mm.
Um,
How
it
about you?
was, yeah.
Sorry.
I did too. I did too. I mean, I look back and I'm like, oh, yeah. I, it was for both of us that we came
Right.
here to the
Right. So
Cowichan
aside
Valley.
from just like maturing as a person and kind of being like, oh, my horse needs more space and can't be an urban animal anymore. Like, what happened in your own journey to be like, hey, patriarchy, hey, white supremacy, hey, colonialism, like, oh, hey, this is showing up in my relationship with my horse. And now what shall I do about it? Like, tell us more about those parallels that you see and how you as a person came to understand that and found other ways to be with your horse.
Yeah. Well, there was this person named Carmen. She was doing some really cool things in Victoria. And I was following along going, huh. I mean, I will admit to you with, you know, oh, yeah, that feeling of, that it wasn't for a while down the line until I made any of these connections, because I was blissfully unaware of a lot of these things until, I want to say, yeah, 7 or 8 years ago. This was when things started to drop in. I'd had my fair share of terrible boyfriends at this time, and I was, oh, this is what narcissism look. It kind of took me down a path of what is happening, like why is this happening, and then I traveled down the usual routes of empath narcissist relationships, and went down these little rabbit holes of trying to understand why I was choosing particular relationships that were so harmful to me, so abusive, and yet I kept being magnetized back. What is happening? And as that was happening, I had all these parallels going on with my horses. It was yeah, very strange. So they were reacting and, having outbursts, and there was all these things going on. It eventually took me down this path of recognizing, oh my gosh, I am swimming in the soup. I am literally so within white supremacy and patriarchy that I can't even see it. Part of that was your work and starting to name things, and me going, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. And as I started to see that, I started to have more and more conversations around what was going on in the horse world. And then, of course, because I'm straddling these two worlds, I'm seeing, oh, wow, this is what's happening. The way I'm being treated in these relationships is the way I'm treating my horses, or, the way I'm being treated in the world, or the way I'm seeing, women or people being treated is exactly what's happening here. And that really started to open up this world for me, and that's when I started. The podcast is on 6 years now. I was like, I have to start having these conversations, start getting this out there into the world about what's going on with horses, and how it intersects with patriarchy, white supremacy, racism. All these pieces are in and amidst this world that I've existed in for so long.
Right. So there's these cultures of dominance, of perfection, of coercion, which you described from being indoctrinated into at 12 and learning how to do that with your horses. This is a tricky question here that I have, which I think we could ask not only horse owners, but like we could ask anybody who identifies as a woman, really looking at capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist patriarchy. My question is, do you think it's ever really possible to be in a consensual relationship with the being that depends on you for food? Like if someone depends on you for safety, can you really be in a consensual relationship? And this is a dilemma I have with horses. And I just want to say, for listeners who might not know, like I am the first generation to not own a horse in my family, which is a deep grief for me, which I hope to rectify someday soon. But that sense of connection to that particular animal for many humans is like an unspeakably strong magnetic draw, because we've worked with animals, we've been companions, we've relied on horses for their power and their magic and their companionship, and so much for so many years. But if we think about systems of dominance, I sometimes wonder if it started when we started riding on the backs of horses, when we started to dominate other large animals. I wonder if that's like a root of capitalism, colonialism. I mean, you can kind of trace the history from there. So it's a tricky question, but what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. And I have many thoughts on it, and they're not all super clear, right? I've worked with many trainers and amazing horse people that are essentially asking this question in different ways around the world. And I think, so Elsa Sinclair is probably the closest, I would say. So this is someone, she's done 2 documentaries so far. One is called Taming Wild. It's her first one. Definitely have a watch. It's super interesting to watch her process. Essentially what she posed the question, this exact question. Would a horse consent to be ridden with no tools, no bridle, no treats, full space, so 100 acres, and the ability to leave at any time. And it's quite amazing to watch what happens. So she essentially rescues him there, straight off the trucks from the BLM. Literally came in the night before. She puts her on the trailer the next day. Takes her home. She lives in the San Juan Islands, turns her out on 100 acres. Her rules to herself: no whips, no halter, no saddle, no nothing, no treats. And she cannot put Myrna between her and the fence. She has to be free. So, and then they go on a year-long journey together with this. She develops a training methodology of sorts. She calls it the slowest horse training in the world, which I would say is accurate. And it's really beautiful. I've done it with Raven. It is really, really amazing. Myrna does, I'll spoiler alert everyone, she does allow Elsa to ride. She actually has a baby. Not Elsa, but Myrna is pregnant when she comes off the range. She has a baby. The last scene is you'll cry. But it was really profound to watch, because as someone with horses, I can say that not putting like dominance into the picture is challenging. There is, a lot of different, there's a lot of positive reinforcement training coming out, but it's still food related. There, I try to really sit with this idea of consent with my girls all the time. But yeah, they live on 2 acres. There's not a lot of places for them to go. If they decide they don't want to do something, it's challenging for them to say, like, not into it today. We do our very, very best I do my very best to just essentially, like, when I go to halter them, it's like, hey, do you want to put your head in the halter?
Okay.
When we go to the mounting blocks, like, my dear friend Lockie Phillips of Emotional Horsemanship, I can't get this moment out of my mind. So back in May, he did a clinic and here in Langley, and a friend of mine was in the clinic, and she was doing something that's a habit, like, for us when we've done natural horsemanship and other things. And so she was swinging the rope at her horse to get him to move forward, like on the ground kind of thing. And Lockie goes, "Don't you dare swing that rope," or something along those lines. And then he says to her, "You can do better than that." And I was like, damn, like, it's true. It's true. If we wait and we actually get in our bodies and we actually listen to what is being shared from our horses, we can do better than that. We don't have to drop into a place of force. It's easy. Here's the thing. It's easy. And that sucks, because it's such a habit for people. And you can force. You can. But it does not mean that you should. You know?
Yeah. So what have you found most successful then? You talk about like natural horsemanship and emotional horsemanship. What's the difference there? Because I know a lot of us have been looking, right? So you hear these
Yeah.
terms, liberty work, and
Yeah.
my kid and I have done that with Raven and Diva, and it has been very profound
Yeah.
to just spend time getting into shared rhythm and mirroring
Totally.
and the sort of interspecies relating and interpersonal neurobiology, but help us understand like which modalities you gravitate towards now
Mhm.
and how you work with them now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to share for everybody that Carmen is an amazing horse person. I
Oh.
just love watching you with the girls. I really do. There's just this beautiful clarity
Mm.
that I really was so moved by.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you're welcome. And knowing Raven, she's not, she's complex and she is very picky about who she works with. And I just really, I feel that from her. It's like she was like, oh, I like this gal. I'll follow her around. Absolutely. And I really, yeah, I think back to that and like it really warms my heart. And so coming back to your question, my horsemanship has changed so much over the years. I think because of things like my podcast and the apprenticeship, I've been blessed and privileged to be exposed to a lot of different training styles. And I have a natural curiosity, I guess, going back to my identity piece, always in my identity as learner. I always show up with that hat on. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to be better for my girls. And I suppose it's a little like having kids. Like I don't have my own kids, but my horses and my animals, like I've got my chihuahua on my lap right now, and my animals are my kids, as Carmen knows. And
Yeah.
um, if that sounds weird, but like that kind of relationship, I love them really deeply, in the ways that I know how. And I suppose that the horsemanship that I am most drawn to now comes back to that love piece, because what I've really seen over the years is, I mean, when I was a kid, I would have said, oh my God, I'm such a horse lover. I love horses so much. But then I look back, Carmen, and I'm like, no, I didn't. I didn't love horses. I mean, I did, but I didn't know how.
Mm.
And that, I think, that's a grief for me, of like all those horses that I interacted with that I loved, quote unquote. And I didn't know how to love them.
Mm.
And I didn't know how to protect them either, or say no for them at
Mm.
that time. And so now I would say the horsemanship that I do is the kind of horsemanship that, you know, you would be so bored to watch. That's the kind of horsemanship that I do. And I do it on purpose. I'm like, I don't need to escalate. I don't need to get mad. I don't need to force things. I don't need to make stuff happen. If the girls want to connect and be a part of things, then that will be, then we'll play in that. Then we'll show up in that. So we play a lot, like Raven and I play a lot together. I've been working with the Balance Through Movement method by Celeste Lazarus to support her to build her strength in her thoracic sling and her shoulders, because she, as you know, has early onset arthritis in her front left foot. And so the horsemanship that we do is around helping. I want to meet their needs, right? So, okay, your need is to feel comfortable in your body so that you can maybe stick around for a good long while and be comfy without medication. What do we need to do that for you?
Mm.
And so that's the work that we do. And it's slow, it's methodical, it's kind of, like I say, boring. We dial it back, we go out for a lot of walks. It's really funny because people will constantly comment on, why are you walking? Like it baffles people, Carmen. baffles people. When you walk your horse, especially if they don't have tack on,
Right.
they can't, it's like a cognitive dissonance for them.
Right. To not dominate or to not ride, to not be making this horse work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you're just going out for a little tootle. They're baffled. I had an old guy literally insulted by it and share that with me. And I was in a fairly dysregulated state at the time. Not so bad that I couldn't go out, but I cackled. I did. I laughed so hard after his grumpy old man comment,
Wow.
because I was like, wow, this is so, for so many people, it's like you ride a horse.
Right. Yeah.
That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And everything
That's
that you
it.
do is to ride a horse.
Right.
All your training, all the things that you work with, that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And why else would you be doing it?
Right. Why else would you be in relationship with this being except for them to
Yep.
make you happy and help you be happy. Yeah, we can see the parallels pretty easily when we put it that way, right? It's like, oh wait, that sounds like patriarchy. What the fuck? Right? Oh no, I've
Oh,
totally
no.
perpetuated it. Yeah. Oh no.
Oh,
So
no.
okay, I want to hear more about, well, I want to talk about the whole horse apprenticeship.
Yeah.
But also I'm still not clear on the difference between natural horsemanship and
Yeah.
emotional horsemanship.
Let's go
What
into
is
this.
that? Yeah.
So emotional horsemanship is actually like a person. So Lockie Phillips developed this company called Emotional Horsemanship, where he uses all sorts of different types of training. Sorry, Lockie, if I'm butchering this, but he brings together some really beautiful pieces from all different places in horsemanship, under the understanding that horses are emotional, sentient beings. And when we can relate to them from that space, and also recognizing our own way of being emotional, complex beings, relating, to these horses in that way, that it's kind of like the rabbit and the hare, right? Or what is it? The tortoise and the hare,
Mm-hmm.
Parable. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
who gets there first, right? I think with horses, we must always strive to be the tortoise.
Mm-hmm.
Just slower than you think, less than you think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you go to a Lockie clinic, if he can, he'll have hay nets set up all around the arena. There'll be water set out. The horses get breaks regularly. The participants get a 2-hour lunch break. I mean, it is set up to actually provide for the needs of the participants. When you go to most clinics for horses, you ride hard for an hour, 2 hours. Your horse stands at the trailer, doesn't get food. There's big differences, right? There's escalation. So that is sort of this emotional horsemanship. Now, I would say I have a couple of, like, Elsa Sinclair, like I say, I love the work of Josh Nickel, Nishang Cook. There's lots of amazing people coming up. This heartens me so much in the horse industry. It's one reason I love my podcast, the Whole Horse Podcast, because I get to talk to everybody, and it's like an excuse to be like, can we just chat about?
Will you be my friend? Yeah.
Will you be my friend? Because I like what you're doing. Natural horsemanship is sort of a broad term, an umbrella term for a lot of different horsemanship styles that came in. At the time, it was revolutionary, as we say. This was maybe like 10 to 15 years ago. We had Pirelli, we had different things coming in. When we examine them now, we see a sort of a pretty different story from this view of dominance, patriarchy. all these
Like still
pieces.
dominance, but just under the it's been sort of softened. It's been given a bit of a glow up.
It's been given a glow up. But here's the thing, Carmen, is most horsemanship at that time and still now is based on a debunked theory, which is that dominance is even a thing with horses. It is not a thing with horses. Horses are like humans. Horses are community-minded, socially natured creature who strives for connection, co-regulation. They want to be in a good space with you. They want to be in a harmonious place with you. Dominance theory came out of some freaking studies that someone did where, I don't even know if it was with horses, but like essentially that they were resource guarding. They didn't have enough food or water. It happens, right? Where horses will go into dominance when they need to survive. When their basic needs are not met, yes, you will see dominance behavior. But all of these training methodologies were based off of something that is false.
Right.
As a
and
motivator.
ever-present threat and pressure.
Exactly. So it works, but it's not going to provide you connection. So here was natural horsemanship coming in saying, if we work with dominance theory in these ways to be like horses, you will get the respect and leadership of your horse. You must have leadership. You need to be the 51%, so to speak.
I see. Okay.
Don't let it's the give an inch, they'll take a mile understanding, right? And
okay. So it was about like asserting your presence and trying to, it's sort of like a form of almost like in humans, like NLP, neuro linguistic programming. I'm mirroring you so that I can entrain you, and then I will dominate you by guiding what I want you to do. Am I getting that right?
Yes,
kind
yeah,
of?
yeah.
Okay.
And then a lot of the natural horsemanship, it would have phases. So if you do it when I ask real light, then great. Nothing else happens. Excellent. If you don't do it, then we raise the pressure. If you don't do it, then we raise the pressure. If we don't do it, then I'm hitting you. If we don't do it, then, right?
Okay. So it's just phased pressure, and we're just trying to attune to like, where's this horse at? And then apply the appropriate amount of pressure
to
at
get
that
the
scale.
job done.
Oh, it's still,
Yeah.
we don't like that. No, we want
Sorry,
something
everybody.
that's more co-regulatory. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So hence retraining people. No, you don't have to lift the rope. You can actually just wait.
Right. You can actually just wait and watch and see what happens and receive their no. If it's a no, just receive the no.
If it's a no, and be graceful about it.
That's don't
a
be
challenge.
pissy about it.
Don't be pissy about it, right? And can we be with that? And what does that look like?
Right.
And what does that feel like?
Is this what the whole horse apprenticeship then is trying to do? Like, give us a bit of an overview of what your program entails.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so this is a 6-month, I call it an immersion, or there's different ways to think about it, but essentially when I created it, I had created a body of work that seemed to be wanting to share itself all in kind of one place at that time. I also, like I said, liked being able to bring people in. I love to collaborate. So hence, I've asked Carmen to be a guest instructor this year and share some of her work. There's
Her
4 other.
Me.
Yeah.
This Carmen.
I'm
super excited about it.
I know. Yeah. And I really felt at the time like there was this gap in terms of just basic, not even basic, but the next level of horse care. So yeah, we know how to groom a horse and pick their feet maybe and do all these things, but okay, what about adding a course in body work? What about adding some techniques you can work with cranial therapy, someone who works with acupressure and meridian lines, all these different types of training that you can then go, oh, that feels good to me. I have always been one of those people. It's like, I want to pick. I'm not dogmatic. It's like, I want to be able to pick and choose what feels good for me, what feels good for my horses. I've really realized with my two girls, what works for both of them is very different. They're the way that we train and work together, extremely different.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for every horse and every person, horse pair is gonna, when I watch you and Raven, it's different from how we navigate the world together. It's one of the things that makes it so beautiful to be with horses is the uniqueness of the connections and what is reflected and brought to the table in every one of those moments together. It's, I think, something that keeps me so in love is that there's this constant growth edge, and that constant it feels like this ask of how can you show up more in yourself, in your trueness, in the fullness of your being. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so in this course, this program, I try to bring those pieces together. It's often reflective of where I am in that time and what has supported and served me, so the people that I ask in are often pieces of my puzzle that I want to offer up and share with others that are on a similar journey, that are going, how do I navigate this super weird world and start to not even start, but maybe I'm entering as an equine body worker or as a equine facilitated learner or equine facilitated therapist, and I want to be able to become even more nuanced in that care and more add more understanding and complexity to reflect this being in front of me that is complex in their needs, much more complex than I think we've given them credit for, right?
Absolutely. So there'll be a ton of information for folks to learn more about the Whole Horse Apprenticeship. And of course, we'll link to the Whole Horse podcast. I would like to ask you about grief and rage. And you started off by sharing there's a lot of grief you still have about mistakes you made when you didn't know better. And so how are you working with grief and also the anger of needing to adapt, because of your illness, now that you can't be as physically active? Like, how are you carrying this grief and this rage? What are you doing for that?
Yeah, it's an amazing question. This is another one that kept me up last night. It's like, oh boy, chewing on this one. I mean, I think like all of us, I shouldn't say that, but for me, Friday, I found myself sitting in front of a thrift store in Ladysmith, sobbing in my car, because we don't know when grief is going to arrive. And at the time, I had planned a trip up island. And I was starting to recognize that morning that was not going to be possible for my body that day. And my brain, my mind, and my heart were like, I want to go. And I couldn't. And so I sat in my car and had a good cry. And as I was doing that, came to the realization, I'd been looking on Facebook that one of my horse clients had passed the day before, and then I had another good cry, and then realized, of course, with all of this, that everything else is going on in the world with the fires and there's just so much. And then a client messaged me, phoned me while this was all happening, as well, and requested a session, because for various reasons her body was struggling, and so I sat and let the tears come, and then I went in the thrift store, got myself some terrible books, I tell you, some Nora Roberts. It was bad. I'm sorry, everybody. But it was a chance to kind of look around and reorient to some humans and to some, thrift store shoe racks and various things. I found, like, I have a piece when I'm in those kind of spaces, like surrounded by things that people have loved, and and I ended up going home, and I did the session for this woman because she was also grieving. And I said to her, look, you got to know, this is where I'm at. You got to, if you're okay with that, we'll do it. Because I find, for me, sometimes in those moments, being able, I know it's weird, but being able to give, and just be together with someone who is going through something. She lost an elder, and is supporting her husband through that grief. And so after that, it really, like, I was like, okay, here I am. I find osteopathy is the work that I do mainly right now. And when I show up in that space and that identity, it settles me in this really beautiful way. And my body just finds this space to be in that is really lovely for me. And I think there's some part of me that, just to give that little sense of, I'm still helping, I'm still productive, I'm still here, doing my little thing. It helps. It helps, because a lot of people have asked me, like, why are you working? Why are you offering the apprenticeship? Why, because for me, that's something important to how I'm showing up. It's something I can do. It's possible for me. I love it. And it gives me a sense of, I'm still here. I'm still helping. And that, just feels what's real for me, what's right for me in this moment.
It sounds very stabilizing. And I want that for you for as long as it's available to you. And your clients are very lucky. And so are all the people who are going to be in the Whole Horse Apprenticeship this year. And thank you so much for being here on this show. And I really look forward to showing up in the apprenticeship. Thanks so much, Alexa. I appreciate you sharing with us today.
Oh, you're so welcome, Carmen. I can't wait to see you there. Yeah, thank you again.
For more information about the Whole Horse Apprenticeship, which begins this September 2023 and runs for 6 months, and to link to the Whole Horse podcast and Alexa's website, head to our show notes in your podcast player or at numinouspodcast.com. I will be teaching a module in the Whole Horse Apprenticeship in January. I'll be teaching about contact nutrition, so attachment theory with polyvagal theory combined with somatics, and it applies to all mammals, humans, horses, all mammals. I'm reminded in this episode of one of my favorite photos of me ever, which, I don't know about you, but I'm not a person who has a lot of favorite photos of myself. Had to really learn how to be with the camera over time. Anyway, it was this photo shoot we did for my book, The Spirited Kitchen, at Alexa's place with the horses. And I was wearing my favorite Scottish outfit, like a literal wool sweater and wool culottes that I bought from a Scottish retailer and shipped over here because I love it so much. And in this photo shoot, Raven came in and sort of hugged me, like nuzzled her face up against my torso, and her head is like as long as my body. And it was a really super tender moment and very intimate in a way. But also, I feel like she also kind of wanted a nice portrait of herself. Like I kind of think she was posing for the camera and that we both just kind of liked being perceived as elegant and maybe a little charismatic. So it felt like a real moment of resonance with us. It's a very sweet photo. Anyway, you'll find all the links in the show notes at numinouspodcast.com. Something we didn't talk about in the interview that I want to mention is that Alexa has written a book called Death Sucks, a straight-up guide to navigating your pet's final transition. And you know, I've said it on the podcast so many times, but reviews mean so much to an author because they help boost the SEO of the book. And so it helps connect the book with its perfect audience. And as soon as you've read Alexa's book, you should go to Amazon and write a review. Even though we hate Amazon, we do it anyway for the author whose work we love. I'm personally deeply grateful to Catherine, who wrote a review of my book, The Spirited Kitchen, Recipes and Rituals for the Wheel of the Year on Amazon. So this is my listener shout out to Catherine, who writes, I love, love, love this book and have already gifted it to several friends. As a white person with Scottish, Irish, English, Polish, and Sicilian ancestry, I'm always looking for resources that decidedly step out of the far too common realm of appropriating traditions from historically oppressed people, and that help me reconnect with my European lineages. Carmen's book does precisely that. And as someone who works hard for collective change, I hold a commitment of weaving more deliciousness into my life. Through her beautifully written and presented guidance for aligning my life with the Wheel of the Year, Carmen's book helps me to do that too. Thank you, Catherine. And my friends, this is the moment. If you've been meaning to write a review for The Spirited Kitchen, but you've been wanting to express yourself really precisely and beautifully about what it is and how it makes you feel. And I know there's a lot of you in that position because people tell me all the time, oh, I'm going to write a review. I just need to find a quiet moment where I can think and express myself beautifully. I'm going to ask you to lay down those hopes and dreams and expectations and any perfectionism now, because done is better than perfect, and time is of the essence. So your review of my book is so valuable right now, as we are just ahead of the fall retail season. The last months of the year are the biggest, most important months for book retail, and it takes time for the algorithm to make a pattern out of what you've written. So please don't let a desire for eloquence be a barrier to writing a review. You could literally just give it 5 stars and say, it's excellent, so much more than a cookbook, and then leave it at that. And then the ghost in the Amazon machine is just going to do the rest. And that will make a huge, huge difference in terms of who can find my book and how much it sells in the coming holiday season. Okay, in case you missed it last week, the big announcement, it's about the Numinous Network. Free Week is happening this year from September 17th to 23rd. The network opened in May 2020, and we've supported nearly 800 people since then with our events, classes, and courses. And the calendar is built around somatics classes 3 times a week. So these somatics classes are like a vagus nerve workout. They help to calm and soothe the nervous system with gentle therapeutic movements. So it's like exercise, but no cardio. No strength training, no sweating, no resistance training, no high intensity at all. It's all low intensity, where less is more, slower is better. I mean, if you liked this episode all about non-coercion, that is 100% what we're doing with humans in the Numinous Network somatics classes. We're just always remembering that even if you choose to stop a practice, you are still doing the practice, because the main goal is to establish trust and secure attachment with yourself. So every time you pause or every time you stop, your body thanks you. And we celebrate you for not pushing through signs of distress or discomfort or even just disinterest. That's like our main practice, is that we are uncoupling our nervous system from the pressures of capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist patriarchy. Anyway, okay, so foundational to the calendar are these drop-in somatic sessions, which include therapeutic tremoring sometimes. And then around those 3 main days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we also have monthly gatherings, a ton of them. This is why we end up with like over 40 live events in the network every month. Some of them are recorded, some of them aren't. Ones that are not recorded, it's because we're doing like pretty intimate, pretty personal work. So for instance, we have peer supervision, usually twice a month. So that's for other therapeutic practitioners who are also doing their work in a way that is uncoupling from capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist patriarchy. And we get together for mutual self-help and witnessing, resource sharing, etc. We do a similar kind of thing for the small business chat. So any entrepreneur, whether you are in the ideation phase or the growth phase, any small business owner is, I shouldn't say small, any entrepreneur is welcome to come to that. We also have our monthly perimeno jam, meaning it's for people who are perimenopausal or menopausal. We also do an attachment jam. Lately, we've had lots of parents of teenagers coming to the attachment jam, so we can just like share information and commiseration about what we're doing with our kids who have diagnoses, mental health challenges, living in late-stage capitalism. We also have a polyvagal meditation class. So if you've tried meditation before and you're just like, I don't know, this feels like a lot of, having to overpower myself or whatever, we teach it in a polyvagal informed way. We also have once or twice a month, usually twice, a gathering for folks who have sensitive nervous systems or who are experiencing long COVID. So if you have any kind of disability, or if you are a caregiver of someone who has chronic illness, if you have long COVID, you don't have to have doctor's notes for this. You just like show up and we are there to validate you. So many of the causes or like the roots underlying the mental health challenges that accompany medical challenges is invalidating environments. So we create a validating environment. And then we also have spaces for grief. So we have a monthly contemplative grief practice. We do almost every month a grief vigil. And this space, the Numinous Network, is also where my book, The Spirited Kitchen, comes alive. So we have seasonal celebrations for the Wheel of the Year. You're going to find that we use many of the book's concepts as jumping off points. So we go beyond the pages to direct personal experiences of spiritual connection to the earth and to the more than human. And during Free Week, you'll be able to peek into the archive and watch the classes we've done already on like ancestral veneration, astro magic, connecting with plants, and so much more. So how do you get to try the Numinous Network for 1 week for free? You sign up for my newsletter at carmenspagnola.com. On September 17th, I'll email you the link to join. So it's hosted on Mighty Network, so some things you need to know. You will need a credit card to join this space, and if you don't cancel at least 24 hours before the end of the trial period, you will be charged for the next month. So you get 7 days free from the day you sign up. You can sign up to get those 7 free days anytime between September 17th and 23rd. But if you don't cancel by day 6, you're going to be charged. And that's not me. That's just how Mighty Networks works. It just takes 24 hours for them to, populate the system or whatever they say. And just so you know, it's totally fine to just try it for a week and then cancel because maybe it just doesn't interest you after all. Maybe it's too intense for you. Maybe your schedule is just tight at that time of year. I just want you to know you will not experience high pressure sales tactics to stay. In fact, many of our nearly 800 members in the past 2 years have come and gone several times according to their availability. A huge percentage of people will sign back in December, because we like to celebrate the month of Yuletide and do like preparations and festivities together. It's like a really big deal in the network to focus on like those special 13 days of altar work and micro rituals that starts on the solstice. Though I will say, although people do come and go, a large percentage of people who sign up for Free Week stay for the fall and winter season. In fact, right now, 40% of our membership in the network has been with us for over a year, most of them since they signed up for a Free Week. And 24% of our members have been with us for 18 months or more. And 14% have been here for 2 years, most having initially joined during a Free Week trial period. So that's really big. Like that validates what we hear anecdotally and in emails, that a large percentage of our members say that the network has been a critical part of their recovery. And sometimes that recovery has been from a physical setback, like COVID or an injury or an illness that, can really evade treatment, like something like fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's, mast cell activation syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, right? So that's ME, CFS, so chronic fatigue syndrome, POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. All of these folks who come to somatic sessions with my colleagues Breda McKibben and Danielle Smith or myself, they say they've developed so much more emotional capacity, so much more nervous system resilience, become so much more skillful at self-regulation. So if that is you, you are exactly who I'm speaking to. Even if you can't physically do the exercises, we don't demand that you do. Come to Free Week, show up from your bed with your camera off. It's totally fine, totally welcome. Come to the classes just to absorb the contact nutrition and see how that feels in your body, because we want ease for you and relief for you. We want that softening into a space of total non-judgment and total welcome and deep understanding. We genuinely want that for you. So sign up for my newsletter and save some time for us during the week of September 17th to 23rd. And you can come and check out our guides and our offerings. Sign up for my newsletter at carmenspagnola.com. CarmenSpagnola. Until next time, take care.